Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. My guest is having some problems logging in. Till if and when she can get in, we are just going to talk. Let me put the phone number up and the Instagram. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I post a picture of a church every day, and you have to guess if it's Protestant or Catholic. That's the job of the channel. It's a very simple channel. I don't editorialize or anything like that. I just post a new picture every day, and you tell me what it is. And that's what it's called: Catholic _ Protestant _. Call in if you have any questions about anything you'd like to talk about today. Hopefully, my guest Lucy will be able to get in. If not, we will just talk for 30 minutes about stuff. The last episode we did was on ways to evangelize to family members that are hard to talk to. Let's go over to Catholic News Agency. I'm a big proponent of not keeping up with the news, even Catholic news. But on these live streams, especially as we're waiting for somebody, what else are we going to talk about unless somebody calls in? Former Vatican spokesman Benedict XVI is ready to meet the Lord. The Jesuit priest made the observation in an interview with a newspaper on the occasion of his upcoming 80th birthday. In the interview, this man said that looks like Pope Benedict is getting ill. He's almost 95. So we'll see. You know, you hear a lot of this about Pope Francis, being near death's door. But I mean, again, it's like, well, there's no point even talking about. Lucy, are you here? Let's see what else is going on in the world of Catholicism. Oh, we got to click.
I'm
Hello,
trying to
David.
I'm trying to help Lucy get going. Hold on, let me mute this for a second.
Let me know when you get her on.
Yeah, as soon as I get her on, I'm just trying to get her to share the screen, and then I'll but just give me like 5 minutes.
Okay. So we will get her on soon. Who are the new cardinals created by Pope Francis? Let's share this screen. There will be 16 cardinals under the age of 80 elevated at the next consistory, which is going to be in a few days. This will be the 8th consistory of Pope Francis's pontificate and the first to be held in August. The last time a cardinal was made in August, a torrid month in Rome when all things slow down because of the heat, was in 1807. August is the time where everyone goes to the coasts. All the Europeans are like, yeah, we leave. In some ways, it's a good time to visit Europe because a lot of the big cities are more vacated because all the Europeans go to the coast. It's probably not a good time to go to the coast. With these new cardinals, Pope Francis will have created 121 cardinals. All right, that seems quite a bit. We have a bishop from Nigeria, a bishop from Brazil, of course, Cardinal McElroy from San Diego, depending on who you hear, might be covering up some sex abuse scandals and is known to be I guess you would call him left of center cardinal. It's interesting how Archbishop Gomez is in Los Angeles, but somehow gets passed over for a cardinalate. And it's not too surprising given that Archbishop Gomez, who used to be my archbishop in where I live before he got promoted to LA, you're wondering, like, why would San Diego get promoted? Why would their cardinal get promoted before such a large city like LA? Well, I would say that McElroy is more in the line of the type of men that Francis likes, and Gomez is a little more conservative, and therefore he got passed up. Got a cardinal from East Timor. One from Paraguay, and so forth. Our destination is heaven. Pope Francis speaks about death. Good. We need more homilies about the four final things. Pope Francis spoke about old age and the expectation of death at his general audience. He recalls the hope Christians have in the resurrection of their own body at the end of time. We recently celebrated the Assumption into heaven of the Holy Mother. This mystery illuminates the fulfillment of grace that shaped Mary's destiny, also illuminates our destination. Our destination is heaven. It is. But we have no idea where we are going. If a Protestant ever asks, are you saved? You can say, well, I'm trying to receive enough grace to be at the end of my life where I've persevered to the end. And because I've persevered to the end, I'm hopeful that I'll reach heaven. We are not guaranteed heaven. Okay, that's the fallacy of sola fide. Christ says it 3 times. Those who persevere to the end will be saved. He also talks about in Revelation 20, at the end of our life will be judged according to our works. Let's see what else is going on in the world here. Let's go to National Catholic Register, a little more liberal. Let's hope our caller gets in here soon, and we're just going to close this up. Father Martin apologizes for not being clear about Archbishop Weakland's sins and crimes. Father Martin, good old Father Martin, the paragon of the Society of Jesus. Archbishop Weakland died August 22nd after a long illness. He resigned as Milwaukee's archbishop in 2002 after revelations that the archdiocese had paid $500,000 to silence Paul Marceau, an adult seminary with whom he had a sexual relationship. There's our boy, Father Martin. Jesuit Father Martin. Just want to make sure this is up. Said he was sorry Tuesday for not having been clear about the sins and crimes. Were you really sorry? Last night, many people were angered by 2 tweets about Archbishop Rembert Weakland, who committed many sins and crimes, who died in 95. Obviously, I condemn his covering up of sex abuse and his paying out hush money. I can see how many people thought I was downplaying his sins and crimes. I'm sorry for not being clear about that. On August 22nd, a couple days ago, Martin tweeted about Archbishop Weakland's death, saying, an erudite scholar, gifted pastor, and Benedictine abbot primate. His legacy was marred by revelations that he paid money to a man with whom he had been in a relationship. I consider him a friend and mourn his loss. May he rest in peace. Archbishop Weakland said he began having homosexual relationships after his episcopal consecration. He dissented from the church's teaching on the immorality of sodomy and the impossibility of the priestly ordination of women. So why would Father Martin then be lauding a man who openly taught against the magisterium of the church? Well, that's all you need to know about Father James Martin. He's only apologizing because of damage control. Martin, I was also surprised by Catholics saying that not only that they could never be friends with someone like that, but that he should rot in hell, Father Martin said. Quote, I take seriously Jesus' scandalous friendship with sinners and tax collectors and consider Archbishop Weakland a deeply sinful man, a friend. The heart of Jesus' message that no one is beyond God's infinite mercy, not even a murderer, not even Robert Weakland. All right, yes, no one is beyond God's infinite mercy if the person is contrite. I apologize for seemingly excusing his many sins and crimes. That wasn't my intent. I condemn those actions. It should have been clear. But anytime there's the conjunction, but, it kind of disqualifies the apology right before. But I also ask if people would have sat beside Jesus as he ate with sinners and tax collectors, as he often did in Galilee and Judah. And his successor, Father Archbishop Listecki, also said, Archbishop Weakland led the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, and leadership embodied his Benedictine. His leadership was that he was openly talking against church teaching. So why would we even bring up his death? How about Father Weakland, Archbishop Weakland, rest in peace. Have mercy on his soul. How about that? All right, David, any luck?
I'm sorry, Gregory. She's in her mid-80s. So I think the only way that I'm ever going to get that to work would be if I'm there with her, which I will be next week. So if you want to try again, we can. I'll just be able to click the thing for her. But it was like I was having her FaceTime, and then I was trying to tell her what to click, and it just wasn't.
Well, unfortunately, I guess that's it. Do you want to stay and talk for a little while?
I would love to. There've been some developments since we last spoke. I went to a TLM mass, and I thought that'd be interesting to talk about. And I've actually, since we last spoke, that was, I guess, late in the summer. I guess that was back in May. I've talked to some more couples who are going through Pre-Cana, and I just thought it was interesting the different perspective that I've gotten on them. But as far as the traditional Latin Mass goes, I went to the one out in Irving, and when I got out there, I knew that I was in for something different because this was only like 2 weeks ago. So it was an ordinary time Mass, and I had a hard time finding a parking space because it was just so overflowing with people, and I didn't expect that at all. And I got there about 15 minutes before it started, and I was in an overflow. Let me shut that off. I was in an overflow room, basically watching on a television with these other people because there weren't enough seats in this little parish. Was
it Institute of Christ the King, FSSP, SSPX? What was it? Do you know?
Got the Notre Dame.
That was the name of the church, but you don't know who. What was the order behind it?
Here it is. So Apollos. Okay. Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter.
Yeah, FSSP.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so Essentially, when the SSPX got excommunicated in '84, John Paul created the Ecclesia Dei. So he created the FSSP, or I want to be correct here. I think he legalized them or allowed them to do Latin masses. Them and Institute of Christ the King. From what I understand, the FSSP was a breakaway originally of the SSPX. Maybe when they got excommunicated, and because the FSSP wanted to be still in the bosom of the church.
Yeah.
What was your? I can look it up. What was your impression of the mass? So a lot of overflow, right? A lot of young families, women, and
Yeah, when you said that the TLM mass was going to be overflowing, I was skeptical. And then when I got there, it was true. As I said, as soon as I drove up and I wasn't able to get a seat in the sanctuary, I had to go to this overflow area. And even there, that filled up also. You know, folding chairs and watching. They had a makeshift tabernacle set up so you could still change. All the women, as I said, were dressed very. They had an enforced dress code. In fact, in the bulletin here, they have this. You can see that the dress code written there. You will not come in here if you're not dressed appropriately, and that was very clear from going in. All the women were wearing the veils. A couple weren't, but I mean, it was like 3 that weren't, and like 200 who were.
There were that little dress thing showed like you have to be covering certain parts of your butt. You see that in the Vatican. The Vatican is very strict on that too. When you walk in, a lot of tourists don't get that when they come in all dressed up, immodest, that they have to cover themselves up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I read about that afterwards. How people would go into these large cathedrals over in Europe, and they would give them basically like the women a plastic bag to wear over themselves that was more appropriate. But yeah, they had to wear had to cover the knee, and basically the shoulders had to be covered as well. And they couldn't wear any tight fitting clothing. And I went to the normal Novus Ordo service this past week, and after having gone to the TLM church for the first time in my life, and then I went to a Novus Ordo, and I looked at how the women were dressed, and then just the whole service itself with the folk music, and because I really never gave it any thought beforehand, I realized, wow, everybody, this isn't as nearly as respectful.
No.
Women are dressed frankly, very sexy, and I just never noticed it before because it was never sort of an afterthought. I mean, there were women wearing Lululemons in the yoga pants at the Novus Ordo, whereas that they would have been turned away if they tried to do that at the TLM parish. So they're much more respectful. And then as far as the service itself went, it's one of the homily was so good. I think it's going to be one of those homilies that I'll always remember because of how well this particular priest did it. I don't know what the readings were because there weren't enough books. Like I had nothing to follow along. I was just sitting there listening to Latin, and there was so much kneeling. I was just listening to it and sort of taking it all in, but there weren't any books for me to follow along with because I was there, I guess, 15 minutes early. It was probably a half hour too late. But in the homily, he was talking about the sin of pride and how he said we have to be careful as traditional Catholics that we don't fall into the sin of pride, because we can say, listen, we are traditional. We homeschool our children. We don't watch the news. We dress properly. What else did he say? He just went through a whole litany of things. He said, we don't follow St. Francis. And he said, but we can't assume that we are better than our brethren in the Novus Ordo parishes. And he went through, he said the greatest sin that we can commit is likely the sin of pride. And it was, I mean, I don't remember well, I shouldn't say I don't remember the homily that was given in the Novus Ordo parish 2 days ago when I was there. He started talking about an episode of Friends that he had seen, and I mean, Friends, openly advocated for fornication. So that's what I was thinking about throughout the homily on Sunday at the Novus Ordo parish where I usually attend.
Did you notice when you went to the Latin Mass how little you have to participate and how quiet it is? I mean, you barely ever speak, and you don't hear the Our Father, you don't hear the Eucharistic prayer, and as someone at the Latin Mass, there's not really a lot of response.
I wasn't sure if I was right or wrong because I'd never done it before, and there's nothing for me to follow along. But that's correct. Yeah, I did notice that it was just a lot of kneeling, and the priest was basically doing his chants, and the music was beautiful. It really was. It's something that I'm looking forward to returning.
You will be going there weekly?
I'm not sure yet. I will go again, but it's out of my comfort zone, so I'm going to have to brush up on my Latin, and I'll have to make sure that I bring my own materials in case something's not available for me in the future.
Look, okay, so going back to the comfort zone, it doesn't. I would tell you, it doesn't really matter if you're comfortable. If you felt something, a stirring at the Latin Mass, you don't necessarily have to have the missal there. You can just immerse yourself in the music. And one of the beauties of the Latin Mass is that it's not necessarily participatory. You don't necessarily need to respond. In the Novus Ordo Mass, it's all like the priest says something, we say something bad. We do this, we do this, we do this. It's just, a lot of just participation. In the Latin Mass, you just immerse yourself in it. Don't focus on the responses. So if you go to one and then you go back to NO and you're like, God, this homily's bad. He's encouraging a show that fornicates. The music's bad. Then why would you ever go back?
Yeah.
There's no reason to go back.
Yeah. No, that's true. I don't, that you're absolutely right. So I'm looking forward to going back, and I will go back. I went to after the Norber Soto parish. Let's see. I went to they have a dinner afterwards, and I was telling people that I went and I attended this, and other these people mostly were in their I think probably early 30s, late 20s, that sort of thing. And this one kid, he was like, "Oh, I went to that last week. Didn't know what was going on. I dressed up," and he pointed out that he thought that the other people attending were divorced from reality. And I asked him, I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, they just because of the way that they dressed, and I don't think I think they live in their own world." And I thought, well, I don't think that's true. I think they probably recognize the world for what it is, but the number one priority in their life is God and the church. And
they probably see those people as like essentially the equivalent of the Amish, right? They walk in, they're wearing traditional dresses, they're covered up. Like, what are these weirdos? They need to go into the real world and be of this world instead of in this world.
Yeah, well, I think that's true, because then later on in the conversation, there was a young couple there who they got married about 6 or 7 months ago. So I was asking them about their pre-Cana process, and they were talking about how much it focused on natural family planning. And this same guy said, "Oh, what, as opposed to going to Planned Parenthood?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Okay, the Catholic Church would never, ever, ever advocate for abortion or using contraceptive." I said, if you think that, then I think that you got to do a little more research there, bud, because that's not what we teach here. So,
well, I think a lot of Catholics are in rebellion, and so I think they don't even care what the church teaches. I mean, you think about how many Catholics are supportive of abortion and abortion rights. They clearly know what the Holy Mother Church teaches on that topic, and they continue to support it. So it's like, same thing for contraception. I had an old episode where I was going through the stats. I think it was from an SSPX episode. I think it was Crisis in the Church, episode 1, where they showed the stats about, like, in the typical Novus Ordo parish, it's something like 80% of Catholics support contraception. No, I think it was lower. I want to say it was a little lower, but it was like 50% support homosexual marriage, 80% support contraception, and so forth. And so, look, the large majority of Catholics know the church's teaching on these things, and they just shove it to them. They're like, "Yeah, I know better." right?
Yeah.
I know better.
Well, it's the last the last time we spoke and we talked about Pre-Cana, I think I've probably talked with about a dozen people, half a dozen young couples or so who were either going through Pre-Cana or recently had gone through Pre-Cana. So I was asking, "Oh, you recently got married? What was Pre-Cana like for you?" And wildly, there's no standard for Pre-Cana. It's wildly different from parish to parish. Oftentimes, because there's so few Catholics who get married within the Catholic Church, the parishes have combined their Pre-Canas, like a regional sort of thing. So in the Diocese of Dallas here, they may have where let's say there's 24 Novus Ordo parishes around here. They'll have just two of them will have their basically regional Pre-Cana meetings. And a large amount focuses on combining finances and then on the process of natural family planning, and that's basically it. There isn't too much else that's discussed. The couple that I met, the only variant was the couple that I met with recently. They were paired up in the parish here with another couple to take them through Pre-Cana over the course of several months. But other than that, it's usually like a weekend retreat. And I've met couples where one was an atheist, the other's a lapsed Catholic, but just wanted to get married in the Catholic Church because they grew up Catholic. Didn't really buy into anything. They were just going through the motions, and it wasn't like anybody inspected where they were living or anything. It was just basically anybody who wants to get married in the Catholic Church, you go through this process so we can check the box off and come on in, and that's it. So I think that contributes a lot to why the Catholic divorce rate is no different than secular divorce. We talked about before on here, but my idea that this doesn't really make much of a difference is true. I think that the only thing that's really going to help you is if you make sure that you marry another Catholic who is actually a devout Catholic. It's not just I was raised Catholic. Well, I mean, so you don't go anywhere. Oh no. That's the difference, I think.
So with Pre-Cana, I mean, when I did it 20 years ago, it was a weekend retreat, and in most dioceses it still is a weekend retreat. Sometimes it's a couple meeting for several weeks with like a couple. But going back to some of the people in there are doing it because they just want to get married to the church or they're lapsed or whatever. I mean, what do we expect the diocese to do? Do we expect the diocese to, first of all, vet every couple that wants to come in and find out if they're truly practicing Catholic? They're not going to do that because
isn't that what they used to do?
Well, look, see, the thing is, like, they don't want to turn people away. Like, if people are wanting to get married in the church and they are baptized Catholic or have the sacraments, they're not going to reject them simply because they're living in a state of fornication. They're just not going to do that.
Well, I have a feeling that if I was going to try to go through Pre-Cana at that TLM parish that I went to, I think they would do exactly that.
Well, they would tell you you need to stop living together. But you're not going to find the church saying, we will not marry you, because pastorally, that's probably not very productive. Because what you're going to do is, like, these people at least are wanting to get the sacramental graces that come from matrimony. And if you tell them, in essentially, you're judging them, you're living in a state of sin, a lot of these people are just going to opt out and leave. And so we do want them to receive the graces that come from matrimony. Ideally, we want them to be in a chaste relationship. But I do think it's a slippery slope if you vet everybody, like have some deep application dossier in everybody to nitpick how Catholic they are. I think there's just problems with that in general.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I meet somebody who are one of them atheists, I mean, like a devout atheist. It isn't like, oh, I just don't go to church at all. It's like, dude's a devout atheist and you're marrying a lapsed Catholic and they want to get married in the church. It's like, I guess I am. I don't think this is going to work out. This is very, very dangerous kind of relationship to engage into if you want it to last long. But you know,
I mean, look. If they are baptized Catholics and they do meet with the priest at the beginning for Pre-Cana or whatever, like if they are canonically they are Catholic, even if they're lapsed. So again, the most priests are not going to turn them away because at least they're making the attempt. Whereas how many Catholics are like, I want to get married at the ranch or at the beach and don't even bother getting the sacrament. You know, they're just going to marry, which automatically invalidates their marriage because by canon law, all Catholics must get married by a priest and have a nuptial mass. And if they don't, unless they have a dispensation, their marriage is automatically invalid. But a lot of Catholics, really
they don't care. Yeah, they just don't care. So I mean, I think it's have the reception out there. It's a big deal. Just have the reception out there. You don't have to have go to the actual church. Speaking of that, gets me to my next point. I've enjoyed your the Instagram Catholic or not. And as I was in, I had a trip out to, I think I was in St. Louis. I sent you some pictures on Instagram of this church that I went to that's under the arch, and it was very obvious that this was formerly a TLM parish. It was old. The rail was still up there. This is Nova Soto, never pronounced that word. Mass, but it's beautiful little cathedral over there. But as I've looked at other places, as you pointed out, quite a few parishes, and I just never thought about this before, they have the tabernacle hidden. And obviously in the TLM Mass, that's the center of the Mass. That's why the priest is always, he's always looking towards the tabernacle. And that's the center of the Mass. So interesting the way that the architecture has changed in the last 50 years, because new parishes, when they're very contemporary, the tabernacle is off to the side or it's hidden.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, this was mentioned. Michael Rose wrote a book about this called Ugliest Sin about 20 years ago. And he talks about how after Vatican Council II, there was just kind of this, in this spirit of false ecumenism, that a lot of dioceses hired Protestant architects to design churches. And the Protestant view of the church is that it had multiple uses, essentially a multi-purpose room. And so they wanted to strip down a lot of what's sacred about the church and make it more amenable to Protestants. Because just like with the Mass, what they did with the Mass too, because they feel like if we make the Mass more Protestant, if we make the churches look more Protestant, Protestants are going to be more likely to convert. Now, whether or not this was earnest or they really knew that this wasn't going to work, we know the fruits of it. It didn't work. It didn't work. Like with anything, if you water anything down, it's going to be less appealing. So certainly there are a lot of churches where they move the tabernacle to a separate chapel, and there's no tabernacle at all. We've talked about it. They moved the corpus and put in resurrected Jesus or things that are worse. So on that Instagram, I do post a lot of hideously ugly modern Catholic churches. A lot of them are in Europe, surprisingly, these kind of ones that were built in the postmodernist period, like in the 60s and 70s. But yeah, I mean, you can go into any large city in America and you will find, especially in the suburbs, you will find churches that have just moved the tabernacle out completely and moved it to essentially a closet. It's quite sad.
Yeah, it is. The other thing, and I'm now noticing things that I just never saw before because they were always in front of me, but I didn't know the difference, especially when it comes to the architecture of the Catholic Church. The other thing is with the music, and you can see when the music was written that we're singing. At the bottom, there's usually a year there, and I've noticed more often than not, it's like 1975, 1977, around 1980, and this is all like John Denver kind of music. And the folks, and it just never even occurred to me, oh wow, this isn't very old at all. Why are we singing this?
Probably the biggest hymnal was Glory and Praise Volume 1 and Volume 2. And a lot of those were written by Jesuits like Marty Hogan. It's good that you look at the dates and you'll see a reoccurring theme. A lot of these are the same writers, songwriters, and a lot of them were Jesuits. And you'll notice in these hymnals, we do have a lot of Protestant songs in there. And in fact, I went to a mass with a Protestant convert, and she was like, "I recognize a lot of these songs, like Amazing Grace, right? There's no reason Amazing Grace should be played in a Catholic mass, but certainly it's just like we talked about with the stripping down of the sacred with the architecture. You undermine the mass as well by putting in this music, which is just not good. It's 1970s, like you said, John Denver with piano and folk guitar, and the lyrics are watered down. Many times the lyrics aren't even Catholic. We get a lot of the table of plenty. A lot of the mass is a banquet. That kind of nonsense. They'll put in the gender kind of exclusive, or they take out the gender exclusive words. Like I remember Light of the World. I grew up listening to that song. We are the light of the world. May our light shine before men. Now it's all, anytime they have all these things that were meant, they put out, and then you'll see songs that will take out any of the pronouns about God or Jesus, our Savior, being him, and they'll put in a gender neutral term. And again, these songs are commonly sung in a Catholic mass, and the pastor's not saying anything, no one's saying anything, because no one wants to offend the other people. Don't offend the woman. That's what we have to call God the Father, the Creator.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Call Jesus the Savior. Call the Holy Spirit the Sanctifier.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was in again at Mass on Sunday, and again, this is something I just, it's like I'm just seeing things for the first time that have been in front of me for 39 years. Tambourine. The tambourine, people clapping, and I was like,
look, it's very cultural. Like if you go to Africa, their music is very upbeat. Their music would be very similar to that. They do a kind of up-tempo music with a large chorus and a large choir and a lot of music. It's just for our tradition and our customs, we've always kind of used it in the Gregorian chant and sacred music, and that's why it's such a departure. So if we were to complain to sub-Saharan Africans, like from Ghana or wherever, about the music, they'd be like, "This is what we listen to all the time. This stuff is great." So, some of it is cultural, some of it is regional.
Yeah.
Vatican II said in one of its documents, Musica Sacrum, that music is supposed to be sacred, and that Gregorian chants still had the first among equal. That music should still be that. So again, it was the architects of Vatican II that decided to put in this really bad music with this bad gender inclusive pronouns. Was that really the intention of the architects? But they had to kind of mute it with, legitimate kind of traditional wording, like in Musica Sacrum. Who knows? All we know is that since Vatican II, the Mass has been largely, in some ways, desacralized. And I think this leads to why a lot of Catholics don't believe in the real presence of the Eucharist. It's like if you go in and people are dressed a certain way and the music is a certain way and people are not really that sacred and acting reverential, I think that kind of lends to the lack of belief in the real presence.
How did you come to the TLM? Did you grow up in it, or did you go to the
No. I grew up. If you go to the Instagram, scroll down. I actually posted a picture of my home parish that I went to in Houston, St. Thomas More Catholic Church, and the church from the outside is exceedingly modern. You would not recognize it. We could put it up here.
It's okay. Yeah, see, this is why I really like you to talk to Lucy, because since she grew up in this and she knows, she misses it. She really does. So I'll make sure that it happens. I'll just have to be there to do it for her, because her generation is rapidly disappearing. So
really fast here. Like I have
isn't their forte. What happened here?
I'm gonna post a picture of.
Post a picture.
I gotta share screen.
Okay.
All right. So over here on the right, this is a picture of the outside of my childhood parish, St. Thomas More. I mean, look at it. Again, there's no way you could look at this picture and think that it's Catholic. There's nothing in it that is Catholic at all.
Yeah, I've seen
church
dogs that look like that.
This church was designed in 1970 or so. The original church, they turned into a gym. The original church kind of had that basilican form, but then they built this and they turned the other church into a gym. But look at this. I mean, no offense to St. Thomas More, because I mean, the pastors there didn't obviously build this church. This church has been around 50 years. But look at it. I mean, it is not Catholic at all. There's no way you can tell from the exterior that this is a Catholic church.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the inside it's gone through different iterations. Shows a picture. It has stained glass on every side that depicts the different lives, the different historic events of St. Thomas More, the English martyr. You can kind of see it here in this picture.
Okay, is that resurrected Christ or is that
crucified? No. Well, we've always had the corpus. The corpus used to be on the far right over here. The tabernacle was not behind the altar. The altar's wooden, as you can see here. The tabernacle, I mean, we can click on it, but I'm worried it's going to go to this wedding planner place. Let's see. Okay, that works.
Yeah, that worked.
So over here is the tabernacle. There's a chapel on the right. But again, you know, it's I don't know. Again, it's just everybody's got different tastes, and that's what I grew up with. So going back to the Latin Mass, no, I didn't go to a Latin Mass only until recently. Maybe the first time it was about 5 years ago. The city I live in only has one Latin Mass. They have an SSPX, but aside from the SSPX, they only have one diocesan church that has a Latin Mass. But no, I mean, I do go to the Ordinariate of the Church St. Peter, which is kind of an Anglican liturgy Catholic parish. But I'm very supportive, of course, of the TLM, and definitely people who go, whether, you know, be FSSP or Institute of Christ the King or even the SSPX, you know, and this goes back to what you talked about with the pastor at the Mater Dei, talk about the sin of pride. And I mentioned this in the episode I did 3 days ago. It's just like this: the rad trads or the right, the traditional Catholics need to stop fighting. There's just so much arrogance and pridefulness on the far right. I mean, if you look at the far right, if I tell them that I am not supportive of sedevacantism, the far right will call me a modernist, crazy leftist. Okay, but then if I talk to someone from FSSP or just a conservative Catholic and say, you know, I don't have a problem with the SSPX. They do recognize Pope Francis. They've recognized every pope since Vatican II. Then I'm a crazy far right sedevacanist. And there's just a lot of judgmental mentality in the far right. And it's sad because the far right should know better, given that they're the ones that are practicing their faith. But it just reminds you, that we're all human and that we're all, suffer from the sins of concupiscence. And we all suffer from kind of the works of the flesh and so forth. It's just, I think that the traditional Catholics should be held to a higher standard because they do try to practice their faith and they know their faith better. That they need to stop just judging everybody. And it's so unattractive. It's a major turnoff, and it makes the far right look bad, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Just because you're looking at the church, you want to look up, actually the one where I grew up. If you look up St. Margaret Parish, Madison, Connecticut, that'll pop up. It's
Madison, Connecticut?
Madison, Connecticut, my hometown. St. Margaret Parish.
St. Margaret Catholic in Madison, Connecticut.
So that's where I was an altar boy. I was had my first communion there.
Oh, it's pretty.
Yeah, you can see. Can you share the screen? You want to see the altar? Let's see. There I am. Where's? I don't see what you're looking at. It's gone through some renovations over the years. I think it was built, or actually, I think it was built in 1968. So it was sort of right at the end of before Vatican II. You know what I mean?
Is this the church right here?
I can't see. Where's? I'm just seeing you and me, and then the screen over and over again. Where's? Let's see.
You don't see it here?
I just see you and me on the screen, and then I'm not sure why it's not sharing like it was before. There we go, you and me. I can point out some things about it, but the tabernacle is displayed front and center, as you can tell, next to the on the altar. Why is this not? There you go. Yep, that's it. Okay, so if you go inside, that's down in the basement below where they had. Yeah, but that's it right there. That's the front. And okay, so inside, if you click on this picture that you have all the kids
that
up.
one took me to Facebook, and it's not popping up on Facebook.
Oh, okay. You had the picture was up there, but you can see, that's how it was when it was built. But you see that picture that took you to Facebook. Oh, there it is. Okay, so you see where there's that little speck of green in the left. That's the tabernacle there. And there used to be a large. They used to have a good sized crucifix, but they've since removed it, and then that was hanging down, and now there's I think that's the much smaller crucifix that's affixed to the wall there. But that's on the left side of the altar there. That's the tabernacle.
Yeah.
So, but that's where.
I mean, look, there's worse churches.
Yeah, clearly. It's just a table. It's just a table. There is no tabernacle. It's way off to the side. And honestly, until you pointed it out, I didn't know there was anything weird about that. I was like, oh, okay, it's over there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's like where we go to church when we were children, we really can't have control. But where we can go to church now, we do have a lot of control. And so, I gotta head off pretty soon. But I would tell you, David, that definitely go to Mater Dei, go to the FSSP parish there. Regardless if it's a longer drive or if you kind of felt alienated because you didn't know what was going on. I mean, the more you go, obviously, the more you'll feel comfortable. Just remember, when you go to that mass, that's essentially the same mass of our forefathers. So it's linking you to the saints. It's the same mass since Pope Pius V in the mid 1500s, and really it's the same mass going back essentially to the early 300s. So I would recommend that you just go to that mass and just kind of avoid the Novus Ordo, because like when I go back to Novus Ordo, I just get so frustrated. It's like taking the red pill, like in the Matrix. It's like once you take it and you go back, it's just like, why be frustrated? Just immerse yourself in the TLM, even if you don't understand what's going on.
Well, I'll get there in terms of understanding. It's just a matter of going more frequently. And it's not that far. It's 20 minutes from me.
Yeah, even better. I mean, I drive a good half hour to get to my church, 30, 40 minutes. So yeah, maybe eventually you can get to that point. All right, but I'm going to let you go, okay? Thank you for subbing in for Lucy.
Yeah, thanks for your flexibility. And everybody who's watching, can you leave a comment below if you have any suggestions for me or anybody else? And
suggestions for what?
Just how I could grow in the TLM and how I can I don't know, people who attend get more comfortable with it, that sort of thing. Because I'll just keep going, and I assume that's the only thing I could do. But if anybody has any suggestions.
I mean, there's online resources. There's YouTube channels like how to get accustomed to it. But there's things you can buy online. But I would just, the more you go, the more you feel comfortable having the hymnal. If you're one of those who likes to kind of keep up with the English and the Latin, you can certainly do that.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, but definitely post in the comments, guys. Anyone who watches this later. David,
Right.
thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
See ya.
See you. Well, guys, I apologize for Lucy not coming on. She is an octogenarian, so she had some trouble logging in. This was the second time she had trouble logging in. But David, who I've had on before, came on valiantly to serve in her stead. Thank you for any of you guys who have been watching this entire time, and thank you for supporting my content. I appreciate it. Till next time, take care. God bless.